Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Lucy Hobbs, and I'm a research director at Bots Clever. Well, that's my day job anyway. I'm also very proud to have been an active AQR board member for the last few years. And last summer, I was absolutely delighted to be invited to be a panel judge for the AQR Excellence Award. This was an absolute privilege because it gave me the opportunity to see and review the award entries, which came from a wide variety of different agencies and consultancies and covered all sorts of different topic areas. I reviewed some of the most fantastic and inspiring work, and it can only be described as being a fascinating, albeit challenging and fast-moving time. So the actual quality and calibre of the submissions was really breathtaking. Upon reading the entries, and it was an absolutely bumper crop this year, I was struck by the quality, but also by the diversity, from studies as varied as sustainability creative campaigns to make the world a greener place, to developing a better, deeper understanding of end-of-life planning, through to driving diversity and inclusion in chartered accountancy. And of course, let's not forget the topic for today, ham. So it was no mean feat to whittle down the submissions to one very clear winner, who on this occasion is Debbie Newbould from Flume. Just before I hand over to Debbie, I just want to give you a very quick overview of the AQR Qualitative Excellence Award, an award that is now in its 20th year, so happy birthday, AQR Excellence Award. And it's one that's highly esteemed and valued within our beloved qualitative industry, and for very good reason. So the award is very much to highlight and to recognise the amazing contributions that Qual makes to our clients, to the businesses and organisations that we serve, and indeed to society as well. So every year, the AQR has a panel of judges, of which I was one, that compromises representation from AQR, from Aura, from SMR, and of course from the MRS as well. And as judges, we look for entries that tell a very clear, compelling story and that demonstrate truly great qualitative thinking. They also need to show how they've engaged with their stakeholder teams and that ultimately will have a significant impact on the client and the organisation involved. So what they really have to evidence is that they have driven true change for their client. And we found this year that Flume's case study, Ham, a celebration of tactical research to grow a commodity category, was a really worthy winner. Now, you may well be sitting there listening to me thinking, well, ham, that doesn't sound like the most exciting space for a research study. Well, you would be wrong. And Debbie is going to explain why in a moment. And I would just like to say that this case study was actually a really great example of how an innovative, fluid and very flexible research approach could tackle a big, hairy business question, which was how do we grow a shrinking, declining category? Now, not only did Flume tackle this in a way that was creative and showed smart thinking, but they also took their client on the journey with them and fully immersed them in all stages of the research study. And while I'm not going to steal Debbie's thunder, the actual impact of the research on the product sales and the performance has actually been truly astonishing. And so, without further ado, please let me introduce you to our worthy AQR award winner, Debbie Newbould, who's the founding partner of Flume. Over to you, Debbie.
Thanks very much, Lucy. Lucy has stolen a little bit of my thunder from the point of view of saying that this is not a sexy category to work in. As Lucy said, we're talking about ham, and it's very much a celebration of tactical research. And I have been a researcher for the best part, well, my whole professional life really, so the best part of double-digit years. And we all know that this is bread and butter work. Tactical research are the things that drive the wheels of our industry. So I'm going to take you through a case study which is all about bread, butter and ham sandwiches, basically, and show you the value of tactical research. There is not a brand matrix in sight here, but it shows you how, if you look for nuance and if you really think about how to drive insight, it's there, and it's there for all of us. So welcome to Flume. So we are now an award-winning independent research agency, and our whole philosophy is to make brands easier to think of, buy and use. And that research philosophy, that our agency philosophy, we think is really valuable here, because remember, what we're trying to do is make brands, products easier to think of. And actually, when you look at this case study, you'll realize its worth and how we were really trying to get this product at the forefront of people's minds. So here I am. I've just won the Prosper, and the Prosper's behind me. And I know everyone's seen this picture go all across LinkedIn, but I still am feeling that AQR buzz. And I would totally echo what Lucy had to say. We never thought we would win with a project on ham, ever in a million years. And I would say that actually, if you can evidence, then you can demonstrate. It doesn't really matter what commodity, what space you're working in, it actually matters the win. So there's me. I am the founder, I'm the MD of Flume, and on this particular instance, I was the project lead on this case study. So this is the first question. If I told you, researchers and AQR community, that tactical research could deliver double-digit growth in a commodity category, would you actually believe me? Probably not, because commodity categories just sort of sit there. You see a little bit of growth one year and then a little bit of decline the second year. And our story is around the most functional of all categories. We get it. Ham isn't sexy. And apologies to any vegetarians amongst you. I will tell you when there is a chart which showcases meat, so you can look away now. But the whole point that I want you to take away from this story is that research has the power to generate insight amongst even the most functional of categories. This is a celebration of the work that we researchers do day in, day out. We are talking about ham today, but we could be talking about any commodity. We could be talking about floor cleaning. We could be talking about milk. We could be talking about current account banking. It is the things we are talking about, things that customers and people take for granted every day. This story really shows the importance of getting insight around very functional categories and really drilling into the different nuances, unpicking detail, and really trying to look at observed behavior, because that can generate real sales growth. So this is what we're going to look at today in today's session. We're going to look at the background and objectives to the project. I'm going to share with you what we actually did as an agency. I'm going to have a little look about what we found out. Then I'm going to share a bit on the impact. And also I'm going to take your questions at the end, if that's okay. So firstly, background and objectives. Well, the first thing to say is that with all commodity categories, ham is no different. It's a very low involvement, chuck the same thing in the trolley every week category for most people. We were doing this work on behalf of Cranswick Convenience Foods. They make a lot of the sliced cooked meats in this country. And Cranswick Customer, a leading supermarket, they were losing share in their premium range, and they really wanted to understand why. Now, just for context, because this is a commodity category, we are talking double-digit millions. So there is a lot of money at stake here. And Cranswick wanted us to unpick and explain, well, why is there this decline? Our project actually began pre-pandemic, but there was a lot of upheaval in this category when deli counters closed. In fact, deli counters closing, as you can see on this screen grab, actually made the BBC News in November 2020. But the deli counters closing really put a lot of pressure on the premium end of the sliced cooked meats market. Data that we had told us that some customers only bought sliced cooked meats in the deli, and actually what our client wanted to know, and their end customer, is, well, where were those customers going now? So we were able to really help and unpick that. And just a reminder that the value at risk here was in the double-digit millions. So the range that we were looking at going into this project, so the value sales for this range were in decline. So they were in decline 35%. And actually the range, the end supermarket was debating whether or not to keep this range. It had been reduced from 10 SKUs to 5. So there was a lot of debate about, well, what is the worth of this range? What's its role? Why should we keep it? Obviously, our client, Cranswick, were very much banging the drum for the range, but the sales weren't really being borne out as a range and a suite of products that had that much worth. Because actually, if you look at that on paper, you would say, is there really any point in keeping this range? And this is what's so exciting about the work we all do, because if you deliver the insight, I'm going to show and share with you through the story of how actually we can drive, through tactical research, we can drive genuine turnarounds. So the objective was clear. We needed to, as a research agency, identify how to reverse the decline. Now, it might seem a really obvious objective, but we really needed to think very carefully about how to approach this project. After all, it's ham. It's something that we don't really think about very much. We just chuck it in our trolleys. It's functional, it's dull. So we really needed to find a methodology and an approach which unpicked the nuances around something that most people, most customers, most of us don't really think very much about on a day-to-day basis. We have 3 specific research objectives. The first thing was to provide a comprehensive understanding of the category of premium sliced cooked meats. You're going to see a lot of SCM, that stands for sliced cooked meats, including people's shopping and eating behaviours. So it was very much a deep dive into, well, what are people doing at this premium end of the market? They also wanted us to look at existing and future ranging. So we wanted to look at different tiers, different varieties of sliced cooked meats, and where some new concepts might fit. So at this stage, it was like, should we keep the range? Should we introduce some different varieties of products? Remember, we were pre-pandemic at this stage. And then, of course, the third objective was to identify the cause of the declining share. So we needed to identify why Cranswick's partner was losing share, and actually, was there anything that the supermarket and Cranswick could do to reverse it? Okay, so good, so far, so good. This is typical. These are the sorts of projects that you will all be so familiar with. But let's have a look at how the story changed as the pandemic came into force, and how we were all locked down for 18 months. So let's think about what we did. So our original plan was this. The first thing to say is that we wanted to start very much with, well, what do we already know? We've been working with Cranswick since 2015. So actually we do know a lot about sliced cooked meats. And of course, Cranswick themselves have a huge amount of expertise. However, and I'm sure it might be the same with a lot of the clients that we all work with, and we all work with on a really regular basis, we've never really done a state of the nation piece with them or for them. So that's really where it all started. We needed to really think about a concise, or building a concise summary of what we already knew from a lot of the previous work that we had done. And that really gave us the impetus to do a kick-off workshop with Cranswick and their supermarket partners to gather all of the category knowledge. It gave us a lot of clarity on knowledge gaps. It gave us some clarity in particular on NPD. What were they actually capable of a business of creating? What were their red lines? Where were they saying, actually, we could never go there for this particular retailer because we've got other retailers that we are making that product for. So this meant by having this foundational start with what we already know and knew, this meant that we knew exactly what new information we had to deliver. The second thing we did was to observe the sliced cooked meat consumption, and we did this in an online community. One of the working practices that's very much enshrined into Flume, my agency's ways of working, is to act like all research is wrong. And that mantra really came to the fore here, because what we didn't want to do is think about recalled behavior, because actually in a category like this, where people just assume that you stuck ham into a sandwich, because that's typically what we do most of the time, we didn't want to rely on what people told us about their behaviors. So what we wanted to do, even in a category like this, was observe what they were doing firsthand. And then we wanted to ask people to reflect on those things. So observation was very much a core part of this particular project. We ran a 10-day online community where we asked people to photograph and record every instance of sliced cooked meat, distinguishing in particular between what they classed as a premium option and when they were fine with something more everyday. Importantly, we also got them to describe the context of that particular occasion. So who were they with? Was it raining outside? Were they feeling a bit flat? So actually that really allowed us to understand very much about their goals and about the context of their behaviour. Our third point was the third part of the process was building in an observational stage in store. So we observed shopping behaviours, in-person store observations. So basically lurking around the cold meat fixture, finding out what people are doing, watching how people decoded the supermarket shelves, looking at what they were pausing over, looking at basically just unpicking how they were decoding the different tiers of the sliced cooked meat fixture. And again, just really drilling into why people were shopping that particular part of the supermarket in different ways. The original plan, number 4 in this scheme, number 4 was then to build in some concept development. But in actual fact, post-pandemic, that wasn't seen as something that we needed to do. The original plan was to, as I said, explore and research new concepts. But what we were able to do from stages 1, 2, and 3 was really build some rules around this new range. So what we then went straight into doing was a quant analysis. And again, one of the really important elements of this particular case study was the ability of Flume to pivot. So we had to really think about a lot of different things that were going on contextually in society at that stage. And this project gave Cranswick the confidence to go into quite a sophisticated quant analysis of a range, remember, that was in decline when we started this project. Okay, so let's have a little look at what we actually found out. So the first question was, well, who are these premium sliced cooked meat buyers? What do they look like? What are their values? We understood that their approach to food, they're very interested in food quality. These are people who are willing to trade up. They like to eat out. They like to try new things. They were quite curious about cultures, ingredients, tastes, and textures. This is all the context that we built in the online community. We also asked them to take pictures of their cupboards and pictures from the supermarket that they went to about what else they considered to be premium. And what that really indicated to us is that premium was very much a way of life. They traded up across a lot of different categories. And you can see just in some of this imagery that it was, for them, premium supermarket shopping was a way of life. So they were trading up right across the supermarket. The other thing we asked them, and again, this was observed behavior, this was all the richness that we were able to glean from the online community, that quality was for them equaled well-being. They were prepared to pay for the best ingredients because these customers felt that they were better for them as shoppers and also better for animals and the world. So yes, they are meat lovers, but they're also very conscious of their health and of the environment. So all of this really important context, which is actually then starting to create these nuances in what you might think is just let's just chuck it in the trolley. Every single week we do the same thing, but we don't when we actually have a look at what our shoppers are doing. So we called this mindful meat eating, and what we discovered was that there were two strategies for mindful meat eating. So this is an audience who loves eating meat. That's fine. They like the texture, the taste, the health benefits as they perceive them being, but they're a lot more conscious about it. This is a shopper who values quality over quantity. They were saying to us, well, we want the same, but we want better. So we want lower fat, we want a focus on trusted sources, we want free range, organic, high welfare. All of those things were really important to them. Remember, we're talking to the premium sliced cooked meat shopper here. And they also said, we want less and better. So they were actively reducing some of their meat intake, but what they were saying to us was, we want to eat meat, we don't want to give it up, but the meat we eat, we want it to be of the best quality. And when you start really thinking about what they're saying, listening to their language helped give us some really useful clues on the future of this range. So they were talking about lean protein, they were talking about reputable producers, and they were talking a lot about consciousness. So again, it's about drilling into the insight, and it was about unpicking these nuances, because at the end of the day, our objective was, well, how do we reverse the decline in this range? This was golden for the client and also for their end, for the end customer, the retailer. What you can see here is the sarnie is still king, but there is a range of sliced cooked meat uses. And what we know as an agency, and I'm sure you guys will really echo this, that actually being able to bring people's lives in front of a client can never be underestimated. We all think we know about ham. I mean, we use it every day, but even in a commodity category, it's this type of observation that really unpicks and highlights, just highlights all the exciting stuff that for a client is going on in their category. This really helps unpick the context. So we're able to demonstrate that for this audience, usage goes beyond the sandwich. There's a lot of non-sandwich action going on here. But when they do use ham in a sandwich, just have a look at some of this imagery. There's good quality bread, there's nice accompaniments, there's strong food values. So yes, on the surface, it might just look like pictures of everyday products, but actually our skill as researchers is to unpick some of this and to really build on this, just building the layers. So actually we're able to create that really deep insight. So what we did for Cranswick is we were able to build a model for buying premium sliced cooked meats. So we were able to unpick what the behavior was. So this was a shopper who was seeking out the best sliced cooked meats available. We were able to determine what the goal was, a real meat experience, and we were able to highlight the product truth that people want lean, wholesome protein that does me good, but also very clear that we wanted to share with them a contextual benefit. So better quality products is better for the planet and better for animals. So that's what we found from our observed behavior. But then the next piece of the jigsaw is working out what was going on in store. And what we found in the store is a lot of what we called rigorous Rolodexing. So yes, whilst many ham purchases are just the chuck it in the trolley as usual, this is not the case for the audience who buys this particular range. And there's that lovely lady there, you can see, she was very much, she picked up the SRP, she was looking for specific cuts of meat, she was studying the fixture very closely to find what she wanted. We called it Rolodexing. She was Rolodexing through the available packs to find the meat that looks like it's supposed to. So she had a very clear picture in her mind of what she wanted. This is an audience that read the pack information closely, and if it's not right, they'll notice and they won't pick up. And again, this is what's so fascinating about this project, because actually on the surface of it, for most categories, is a lot of system one thinking going on. When you actually start to drill down and watch, when you've got somebody who's much more invested in what they want to eat, you can see that they're prepared to put the time in to make system two considerations. Any vegetarians, look away now, because I'm just about to show you some images of meat. So what was she looking for? Was she was very clear, and this audience we were able to unpick very specifically for our client, an understanding of what the appearance of the meat should look like and how it should be packed. So you can see there that they wanted a lot of imperfection, they wanted thicker cuts, a larger window to really see and be able to examine the meat, labeled with a lot of the quality cues, and then a packaging substrate. So again, for us as marketeers, we're looking at the full marketing mix here. So we're not just looking at actually what people choose, we're looking at how the other elements of a product, how people decode and work with that. What we then were able to share with our audience was that there was a clarity that emerged in the different roles and audiences around premium ranges. So there was the supermarket premium brand, that is badged with a familiar premium name. The customers who were looking for that were very much seeking out great experiences, new taste sensations. Those customers, let's park them for a minute, because they wanted special cuts, cures, treatments, deeper flavors. Our supermarket had a range that really worked for those, but for our struggling range, the one that was very much under the microscope, this is a customer and a shopper that really embraces deli cues. They were asking for things like thicker butcher cuts, ham as it used to be. They value authenticity, they value freshness. It was very much, they were much more home cooks, so they were seeking plainer meats, familiar ingredients, and for them, it was not so much about the taste. For them, it was all about the meat and actually judging the meat to then have a knock-on effect on what it would taste like. Just to recap, what had then happened subsequently is that the deli counters were now closed. So we were thinking to ourselves, this is how the project then pivoted. So our client said, well, we've got all these shoppers and they don't know where to go. Let's understand a little bit about what's happening to the deli counter shopper. And actually what they were saying to us is, well, where do I go now? Help me. So for the deli counter shopper, the in-store shelves are actually quite scary places. What they found is, or what we found through observing what they were doing and what they were telling us was, they were saying, well, it's often messy, there's empty shelves, there's a limited protein selection beyond ham, there's lack of recyclable packaging, there's no theatre inspiration. And here we go, they're saying ham is ham is ham, it's all too ham-based, I can't tell the difference. So you have this whole cohort of people for whom the retailer had closed the deli, but where do they go? And again, you know, we're talking about a lot of sales here. So it was really important that they had a range that suited them. So from the butcher to the deli, so what we as an agency were able to deliver was rules to reinvigorate this new range. So we had rules around the product, which needed to be plain, pure, risk-free, and that was really important for this audience. The range had to deliver a promise, so by hand, straight off the joint. It had to be packaging that was very deli style, that was very tactile. Again, it was the substrate was really important here, and also persuasion. They wanted traditional, familiar, very simple language. So we were therefore able to give our client very clear direction for the future. We were able to say that this audience is different. They're not a mainstream sliced cooked meat buyer. They interrogate everything. They're looking for something very specific. Secondly, we were able to say this range actually plays a very different role. It's not a fancy flowery range. It's traditional, it's straightforward, it's uncomplicated. It's quality, but it's still for everyday use. So therefore, this range needs different cues. So versus the usual supermarket premium brand, they needed a different product, and they needed a product that was merchandised and packaged differently. So what, therefore, were we able to let people, or tell our client? We were able to tell our client that this was an audience that wanted just like the deli counter, but easier. So the last piece of the jigsaw is, at this stage, they were saying, fantastic, we understand what to do, well, what do we do now? So let's optimize this now growing range. So the Qual had given Cranswick some very clear direction on the presentation of the meat, the pack, the merchandising. We were able to, we started to see reversal in sales decline. We were able to tailor a range that really fitted with the needs of the premium sliced cooked meat buyer and those that also only used to buy in deli or on the deli counter. So we were able to absorb all those customers. And we also gave them confidence in the range, and in particular confidence in the research to undertake a quantitative, the quantitative piece. They did some turf analysis, which provided guidance on potential new SKUs that would provide the biggest incremental uplift for the range. So we were able to mess around with different types of SKUs, different products, and really build a dedicated and, well, fantastic range for the client. Let me just share with you the impact. So we think that there were 4 reasons why this was an award-winning case study. So the first thing is delivering clarity. So the way we like to operate as an agency is giving research back to the clients that delivered on those objectives. So what did they want? They wanted a deep understanding of sliced cooked meat, shopping and consumption behaviours, and the potential role of the new range. And I think as an agency, we really delivered that. And sales really, that was demonstrated in sales. We also were able to demonstrate a lot of agility. So we were able to give Cranswick clarity over the range's role. We demonstrated what cues, what the shoppers were looking for, and that really equipped us to pivot when the pandemic hit and support in very different ways than had been planned. We were also here, and this is what I really want to bang the drum for all of us as researchers, is to elevate the tactical. So when we started this off, this was a purely tactical brief. There was no brand purpose here. There were no comms. There was no brand matrix, none of that. What this was a brief that is tactical to its core. But you can see that these type of briefs, which we work on day in and day out, have massive tangible benefits for the clients, and they should be celebrated more. And I'm here to say, look at it. If we actually say to ourselves, isn't this wonderful what we do, you can see a massive benefit for the client. And the last thing we were able to demonstrate in this case study is the business impact. I can't share with you actual figures. I can tell you it was multi-millions, and I can also say that the sales of this range are now 6% higher than the combined value of the lost deli counter business and the value of the range at the start of the project. So just think about that if you're talking about it in the sense of millions. So they were able to absorb a lot of the lost deli counter business, which they were very worried about. They were able to reverse the decline in the range, and overall, the sales of that really mushroomed, which is truly amazing. And I will give the last word on this case study to our client at Cranswick. And this is what he said in a nutshell: creating a new range from nothing is amazing. It is genuinely groundbreaking for the supermarket and gave us more faith than ever in research. So that's me. Any questions?
I hope there are. Did the range expand at all, Debbie?
It did. Because when we started, the range was in decline. So they'd gone from 10 SKUs to 5 SKUs, and they were like, we're not really sure what to do with this. So it was definitely, Luella, a range that was on its way out. Now they are on 11 SKUs, and there's plans for more. And what this project did is not, I mean, this, as an agency, we talk a lot about the full marketing mix and why it's so important. We were looking at not only the product itself, the way it's packed. We were also looking at shelf-ready packaging as well. So there was a lot that we were looking at, and it really gave the client and the end retailer a lot more, just a lot more positivity in the range, and the ability to basically produce new products within this range.
We have a couple, I think, coming up. So I'm not sure whether you can see them, but Julie says, really interesting and thank you. Did you interact directly with shoppers, and how much time would they give you in store if spontaneous intercepts?
Okay, so we did interact directly with shoppers. How we actually did this project was we did some, we recruited some shoppers. So we did some accompanied shops as well as spending time observing. So I personally, as a researcher, I think that both techniques are really, really useful, but I think sometimes if you go back to back on accompanied shops, you don't really have enough time just to stand and observe. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend standing and observing in the sliced cooked meat aisles because it's a cold place to be. So if you are going to be there in the future, make sure you wrap up warm. But what we did is we used a mixture of recruited interviews, so asking people to turn up at a certain time where we could walk the aisles with them, but we also did a lot of observing as well of what was going on in that aisle.
Monique is after who was the target market for the research? Were they all age groups or slightly?
They started off being Yeah, they started off Luella being all age groups, because remember, they were saying, well, this is a premium sliced cooked meat buyer. So, you had this big cohort of people who just buy premium sliced cooked meats. But what we recognized that for this particular range, it was a slightly older shopper, because the demographic for the deli counter is by nature older. So we realized that it was a slightly older shopper that wanted this specific range.
And were they family purchases or smaller household size?
Smaller households, tends to be smaller households. But interestingly, as you see with all projects like this, when you are very clear about your target audience and the range suits them, your secondary audience, is, as Byron Sharp tells us, it's the secondary audience that builds the lighter buyers, that builds brands. So because we were very clear about what the primary audience wanted, actually we picked up a lot of light buyers. So that could be a family purchaser who wants a little bit of something nicer for them as an adult. The kids can have the sandwich ham, but actually we want something a bit nicer for us.
Abiola says, thank you, and it's a lovely presentation. She also asked, how were you able to easily link research questions to the marketing objectives?
Well, I think the thing is with these type of things or these type of projects is to really think very carefully about what the research objectives are. Remember what we did in this particular project is we spent quite a lot of time up front with Cranswick working out, well, what is it that you really want to know and what do you already know? So yes, we were easily able to link the research questions to the marketing objectives, because it's never quite as binary as that. What I think our skill is as researchers is having a very distinct set of questions, but the objectives are the overall things which we have in our heads all the time. So it's not always a direct ask a question, get something back. It's about piecing all these pieces, all these different facets of the jigsaw together.
And if there's one thing you could change or do differently upon reflection, what would it be?
Is there one thing I could change or do differently about this project? Not have a pandemic. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the community was so invaluable. Actually seeing all of that imagery of people's actual behavior was just invaluable, because I think that was the piece that the client had never really considered before. And I think a lot of the time as researchers in groups, and I love groups and I do a lot of them, and they are a fantastic vehicle, but often that's recalled behavior. And I think in a category like this, where people think they know what they're doing, actually when you observe what they're doing, you get more insight and you get more nuance. And it's that nuance that really generates the magic.
So Julie's still hogging the questions at the moment, and I'm going to move over to the chat one in a sec. She's got two. One, was the majority of the growth and reversal of decline due to the deli counters closing? And has Cranswick now become more committed to invest in more tactical research?
Okay, first question, Julie. In part, yes. So the growth and reversal of the decline was due to that, because, the deli counters closed and there was a lot, this was, as I said, I keep saying double-digit millions. So suddenly it's like, well, they didn't know anything about where that shopper was going. But I think this is where our learnings now of marketing theory, because the range was so good, they were able to pick up a lot more lighter buyers, and light buyers grow categories. So yes, the deli counter shopper is your core buyer and your loyalist, but actually all those light buyers were the people who were really driving the range. So yes, Julie, first question. The majority was, but we also were able to bring in a lot of additional buyers. Has Cranswick now become committed to investing more in tactical research? Well, no, because actually now what they're committed to is buying more strategic research from us, because this is a tactical project, but I'm hoping that what you can see, the audience can see, is that even these smaller projects, which in the outset you think, oh, this is just, you know, our standard sort of research project. Actually, all research projects have strategy at their hearts, and I think that's what we do so well as a community. We like wrestle with these big issues which feel quite tactical, but actually at the end of the day they're big and they're strategic.
You've got very many thank yous, but you've got one query from Lucy, who says, did you talk to store colleagues as well?
No, we didn't. We tend to, we don't always talk to store colleagues. I think, in fact, it could have been quite a useful thing to be able to do, to talk to store colleagues, but this particular project we didn't. But I often find that if you have enough time to do, if you allow yourself enough time to do observations as well as recruited projects, then naturally you can get feedback from store colleagues or pub managers or just those sort of knowledgeable experts who are there doing it day in, day out. So I'm a massive advocate of talking to those people who are at the coalface.
Monique is querying whether the pandemic didn't actually drive the deli shopper to the ready packed ham category, leading to category growth. So
well, a little bit, yes, Julie, a little bit. Sorry, Monique, yes, probably. The increase was, but remember, this was an increase in this particular range. So, but overall, it grew the category. And, you know, the category is a really important category. Sliced cooked meats is something that is growing. And in fact, Monique, what's quite interesting is it's now growing for an older audience. They are often buying thicker cut sliced cooked meat as an alternative to a roast. You don't have to put the oven on, so you might cook your veg. So actually the context of the societal context has a big impact on many of these categories that we work in.
I think I'll give you one last one, because I'm really keeping an eye on the clock here, and it's been really good. You've had loads of thank yous and wonderful project. So the last one is, while you developed a new range after the project, was this always the ambition from the initial brief, or was this an outcome based on findings throughout the project?
I think that's quite a difficult question to answer, because what they had before that is that they had a few SKUs on the shelves which were in decline, and they called it a range, but as marketeers I would never really say that it was a range. As a result of this project, they invested in it and they really gave it shelf space, and it became a range. So yes, I would say as a result of this project, the range was given far more, it was just given far more thought and seriousness went into this range, so it became a proper tier and a proper range within all the sliced cooked meats that this retailer does.
I'm going to look out for it, because I mean the one thing that gets me as a vegetarian who buys meat for the family is they never reseal properly.
No,
you always get crinkly bits.
Yeah, you do.
But apart from that, thank you very much, both of you, Lucy and Debbie. It was a really interesting one, and you are a worthy winner. And I look forward to seeing many more.